Alright, we're on lesson 2 now, starting on page 3 of your packet. And the first thing is, what are some rules that you use to solve equations? So take a minute to think, what are some things that you know of that you can use to solve equations, and write them down. Alright, so hopefully you got your basic math operations. So add, subtract, multiply, and divide. You might have mentioned often we have to distribute. We always do the same on both sides to keep things equal. And you do the opposite to eliminate. So you started learning to solve equations in 7th grade, you did in 8th grade, you did in Algebra 1. In geometry, we're explaining how and why. Okay, this is a review of solving equations, but the main thing is, can we get to the words? We're going to be doing proofs next lesson. And so we're going to list out our steps. So first step, when I see this problem, I have two n's on this side, so I'm going to combine like terms. And so 5 minus 4 is just 1, so I'm left with just n, equals 3n plus 2. Next, I need my letters on the same side, so since that n's already there, I'm going to subtract 3n. So n, this is a 1n minus 3n, gives me negative 2n. And that cancels out. Negative 2n equals 2. So what's my last step? It's a nice simple, just divide. Anytime they're joined together, I divide. So n equals 1. And then the last step is always check, especially if you're on like a quiz or a test. Plug it back in there and see does it work. So does 5 times 1 minus 4 times 1 equal 3 plus 2? And I check. 5 times 1 is 5 minus 4 equals 3 plus 2. That does not work. That gives me 1 equals 5. So no, that's wrong. So then I go back and check my steps. Yes, I subtracted, right? That was negative 2. There's my problem. I forgot to carry my negative here. It should be a negative 1. That's why we always check, just to make sure we're not dropping negatives. And so I'm going to come back in here and say, okay, 5 times negative 1 minus 4 times negative 1, does that equal 3 times negative 1 plus 2? So negative 5 plus 4, does that equal negative 3 plus 2? And so that gives me negative 1 equals negative 1. Yes, that checks. My answer is negative 1. Alright, our next one's a bit longer, so we're going to go ahead and write out our steps. So, first step, what do you think? If you said distribute, you were right. So distribute. Negative 14 minus 16b equals negative 6b minus 34. Next, I'm going to go ahead and move my letters to the left, numbers to the right. So subtract. Oh, sorry, I'm not going to subtract. It's already a negative 6, so I'm going to add. I always do the same to both sides. So negative 14 minus 10b equals negative 34. Now I need to move my 14 over, so it's a negative, so again I add. So plus 14. We get negative 10b equals negative 24. I'm sorry, does not equal negative 24. Equals negative 20. And last step is divide. So b equals positive 2. Then we're going to check. So I plug it back into that original equation. So it's negative 2 times 7 plus 8 times 2. Does that equal negative 6 times 2 minus 34? And I do the math. That's negative 12 minus 34 is negative 46. This is 16. 16 plus 7 gives me 23. 23 times negative 2 gives me negative 46. It checks. Alright, so flip over. Now you're to the practice section. And so just to show your work here, make sure you're working out the problem and writing out every step. And so pause the video, give it some work, and I will show you a few more examples for if you got mixed up, but try them on your own first. I will give you an answer bank. And so this is in mixed order, but you should find a negative 4 somewhere, a negative 3, a 5, positive 3, a negative 1, and an 8. So for these 6 problems, you should get those 6 answers in a mixed order. Okay, so hopefully you followed directions, paused, and attempted these on your own. I'm going to give you the answers, and I'll work out a few of the harder ones in case you got mixed up. So this one, our words should have been combine like terms. To get 7x equals 21, and then divide. To get x equals 3, and then check. So that would give us 18 plus 3, and yes, it equals 21. Okay, so that's the format if you're a little mixed up. Our answers, this one should have come out to 8. This one should have come out to negative 3, 5, negative 4, and negative 1. So again, to get credit, you need to show that you've worked through these on your own. So this is still part of the notes section. I'm going to work out another one of the long ones, going through step by step. So I'll work number 6. Our first step, distribute. So that gives us negative 56n minus 21 equals 33 minus 2n. So then step 2, I want to move my letters over to the other side. So I'm going to move this over by doing plus 2n to both sides because they're on different sides of that equal sign. So add 2n to both sides. That gives me negative 54n plus minus 21 equals 33. My next step is to add 21 to both sides because it's already a negative. So that gives me negative 54n equals 54. My fourth step, I divide by negative 54 to get n equals negative 1. Now I need to check. So to check, I could write this all out again, or I could do my shorthand way of just squeezing it in right there. So if that's negative 1, this parentheses becomes negative 8 plus 3, which gives me negative 5. And I multiply negative 5 times the original negative 7, and this side of my equation becomes positive 35. That equals the 33 minus 2 times negative 1, because I'm just taking this, plugging it in. Those multiply to give me positive 2. 35 equals 33 plus 2. That's true. So it checks. And so that's the way you do these problems. Just follow through one step at a time using your simple vocabulary.